Welcome to Dose of Social, your recipe for social media success. I'm Lindsay Mao.
I'm Kayla Pearlstein.
And this is Dose of Social.
Today we are really excited. We have Armando Garza, who is a Chief Growth Officer and a very good friend of mine as well.
Hello, good morning.
Thanks for joining us today, Armando.
Thanks for having me here. This is going to be fun.
Awesome. All right, so Armando, as we get started, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. I started out actually as a nuclear engineer, if you can believe that. Went to the Naval Academy, then decided that Homer Simpson wasn't who I aspired to be. So I went to business school and started my career at Procter Gamble. Then worked for Frito Lay, Pizza Hut, and for about the past decade have been working with startups, either in a founder role or chief growth officer or marketing role.
Yeah, and so Armando and I actually met at a CrossFit community here in Brentwood, Tennessee. And when I found out he worked at Procter & Gamble, I had also worked with a client who worked at Procter & Gamble, and they happened to know each other. So that was kind of a fun coincidence.
It's a small world. CPG world is very small.
Yeah, worlds colliding. I love it. So Armando, as we get started, we're going to talk today about finding your target audience for social media, for a small business or a brand. Why is it so important for a brand to identify their target audience?
Yeah, target audiences are important because as a small business in particular, it helps you reduce waste in terms of your spending, but it also drives revenue. And those are the two most important things as a small business, which is how do you quickly generate income or revenue, and how do you do it very efficiently?
Yeah, that's great. And how can a brand identify their target audience? Because obviously there's a lot of testing that goes into identifying your target audience as you're getting started for a new brand. So how would you recommend a brand get started testing and iterating and identifying their target audience to start?
Yeah, it's a little bit science and a little bit of art. The science piece is really looking at the data. If you have current buyers, it's really sifting through and trying to get a good understanding of who's currently using and buying your product. The art part, right, and the marketing term for it obviously is psychographics. It's what are their behaviors? What are their motivations? What's driving them, or what are their wants and needs? And so, an example could be, let's say you had a business with plants, right? And you had a special plant that you love to grow, whether it was a bonsai tree or an orchid, right? Understanding who that target audience is important, meaning you're going after people who like landscaping, potentially, right? You're not going after people that want mulch, right? You're looking at people that want bushes. Then you're trying to figure out how many of these type of plants would these folks want to purchase. And this is where you start to then narrow in on your target.
And then what are some common mistakes that you've seen small businesses make when it comes to identifying their ideal audience?
Yeah, I think the big mistakes are really not doing the research. Research is important, and research can be done in many different ways. One is, obviously, as I mentioned before, we're just looking at data. Who's bought, who's currently purchased, or who's already bought your product. But one of the really fun things you can do is actually go and look at other people's social media. So if you know some competitors, go follow them, go look at what their customers are saying, go look at what people are saying about them in social media, and you can get a really good sense of who are the buyers that you're going after and or who are the people that probably aren't your buyers, and that's okay. It's okay to say no to some people because that's where you may waste some money.
Yeah, I would say it's just as important to know who isn't your audience.
That's right.
Just as much who is. That's great advice. And looking at competitors on social media is so important. It's something that anyone can do. You can find your top five to 10 competitors and look at what they're doing on social media and use that as research to help you identify your target audience. That's great advice.
So we've actually worked with clients in the past that didn't know who their target audience was. Can you explain to our listeners who might be small business owners why this is important for them to understand before bringing on their social media manager?
Yeah, it really comes down to, the whole notion of shooting in the dark, right? You really, if you only had 5 bullets to shoot, and maybe this is not the greatest analogy, but you want to make sure that you're hitting the right target, right? And if your eyes were closed or if you were shooting in the dark, that's the same as not knowing who your audience is. Mm-hmm. And it ends up becoming a waste, really a waste of money. And in the social media space and or in online advertising, the way that algorithms have gotten better, you really want to be very targeted because that's where you can be more effective in your spend. And so, really honing in on those target audiences and or creating a persona, if you will, really will help that.
You just mentioned my favorite word as a marketer.
I knew it.
Personas.
I knew it.
I love it. Okay, so personas are super important from a branding and a marketing perspective. Armando, can you share with our listeners a little bit more about what a persona is and how a brand can start to build multiple personas out for their business?
Yeah, it's a fun exercise, or it can be. And again, it's a little bit of art and it's a little bit of science. If you go back to thinking around demographics and psychographics, one of the most fun projects I worked on, I think, was when I was at Frito Lay. We were working with CVS. That was one of the customers I dealt with in shopper marketing. And CVS, think of their acronym CV and S, and there were 3 personas: Caroline, Vanessa, and Sophie. And so if you think about the demographics, right? That's age, income, maybe geography, and as I mentioned before, psychographics is more on their need state, right? What are they doing? So Caroline, and I'm testing some memory here, but I think it was 18 to 30-year-old, new mom. And if you think about that shopping trip, Caroline's coming to CVS because she either needs a quick medicine, maybe it's a quick fill-in, and she's probably, again, from a Frito Lay standpoint, looking for a quick snack, right? She's not there to do her whole grocery shopping. She's looking for a quick snack. So having the right assortment and price for her is important. Vanessa, right, tends to be, I think, a higher income, probably kids in her teens, I think it was. I don't remember the age demographic, but let's just say it was, 30 to 45. And why is she coming to CVS? Well, she's probably coming, again, for medicines and stuff, but her purchase size is going to be a little bit bigger because she's shopping for kids, right? She's shopping a little bit more for the family when she's there. So again, if you think about what size chips, these are going to be larger bags, maybe even a multi-pack type thing. And then the last one, Sophie, was your typical boomer, 55 plus, no kids in the house, right? And again, going for meds, but if you think about their snacking trip, this could be a grocery trip in some ways, right? And so building those personas is important because it gives you an idea and it starts to create a visual of who it is that you're really trying to market to. And the last test that I like to do is what I call the celebrity test, right, for your brand, which is, is Kevin Costner my target, or is it, pick somebody else, The Rock, right? And who am I really trying to market to? Because that can also be a fun exercise to help with your personas and developing those out.
Yeah, that's really great information. Thanks so much for sharing that. I had no idea that CVS stood for Caroline, Vanessa.
Yeah, those were personas that they had created, and that was some fun one. Yeah.
You heard it here on Dose of Social.
But don't fact check me, just in case.
That's awesome.
Before we dive back in, we wanted to give a quick shout out to our incredible Season 2 sponsor, the Sapphire Suite.
Are you looking for a space that inspires creativity, fosters connection, and supports you in growing your business? Located in the heart of Franklin and Cool Springs, Tennessee, the Sapphire Suite is a co-working space designed exclusively for entrepreneurs and business owners. Whether you need a stylish spot to host meeting, a quiet corner to focus, or a supportive community of diverse thinkers who will challenge and support you, this is the place to be. Subscribe to our newsletter and receive a free day pass to experience our amazing community of business owners for yourself.
This episode of Dose of Social was brought to you by the Sapphire Suite. Thank you so much to the Sapphire Suite for sponsoring season 2 of Dose of Social. So in terms of, you mentioned a couple different things. So one is you want, obviously, gender, age, information, like whether it's a new mom or someone who's older with kids out of the house. Those are all things that are important to consider when you're identifying who your target audience is. And age is a factor, and thinking about their different interests as well. Mm-hmm. Those can all be helpful things to help you find your target audience. Love it.
Are there any specific tools or strategies you could recommend to small businesses when it comes to finding their target audience?
There are a lot more things online that I've noticed, in the past few years in terms of really helping small businesses with targeting exercises, how to think about targeting, back when I had to learn it, right? Most of it was in a textbook or you built through practicing. So there's a lot of really cool stuff out there. And I can't remember the series that I know. I watched a series, I think it was probably about a year or two ago, just to, every once in a while it's kind of nice to get a refresher and see what's new. But I would say look online. There's a lot of really cool tools out there.
I would say Google Analytics is a great tool if you're not using GA4 for your business. Just taking a look at that on your website. That will give you information on where people are coming from to your website. It'll give you location. And I believe it does give some light age, gender information as well. Another great tool for identifying this information for your audience would be through your paid advertising. So if you're advertising on Meta or Google, you can actually do a breakdown of age and gender of who's actually purchasing or converting through your ads. So I would say those are some great tools to start.
Really good sources to kind of look at that internal data.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any external tools that you would recommend or digital tools that you know of that might be good for identifying your target audience?
I think the competitors is where I usually go. I stalk their social media and really try to get an understanding of who are they trying to talk to and how are they trying to position. And then, depending on the service or need. So, when I started a property services business, a lot of what I did was just talk to people. The good old fashioned focus group. Yeah. But it doesn't have to be so formalized. Just getting out and asking people questions. And in fact, I was talking to somebody the other day. They had called me about asking a question on a marketing piece that they were trying to put in the market. And, they were trying to abbreviate some things and, asking me like, old school would be this is kind of the new way. What do I think? And I said, look, I could see it both ways. What I would suggest is go find somebody in the lobby of the building who has no idea anything to do with your product and ask them. And just ask probing questions. And I find that a lot of times we're afraid to have those conversations, but it's such an easy way to gather information.
I love that. I mean, that could be you're in a coffee shop and you run into someone.
Exactly.
So one other tool that I want to mention, because we talked about on the organic side looking at competitors' social media, you can also do that on the paid side through the Meta Ads library. So the Meta Ads library, you can actually go in, type in a business name, and you can see all the ads they're running on Meta for their business, which I think could be very useful for a brand who's looking to say, oh, this ad looks like it's targeting this type of audience, and this ad looks like it's targeting moms. And so that's another way you can do some research.
How often would you say that businesses should revisit their target audience as they grow or as the market changes?
Yeah, I like to do it annually in the beginning. And it's really good practice to force yourself to do an annual review. It's a little bit of a, let me look in the rearview mirror, but also let me look forward. It's really hard as a business owner to do that because there's always a fire to fight. But it doesn't have to, again, it doesn't have to be a super long drawn out, 2-day process with a bunch of meetings. It's, hey, let me just understand who is buying my product, who are my core buyers, right? Most of the time you'll find that 80 for 20 rule, right? Where 20% of your buyers are buying 80% or doing 80% of your business. And those are the people you want to find more of. And so doing that and understanding that audience, has it changed? I was in the credit union industry, right? And one of the things that they're starting to see is that their current users are aging out, right? They're not bringing in millennials or Gen Zs. And so, if you think about looking at your business every year and understanding your target, you could argue, right, that there's an opportunity for them to shift their target focus toward those younger generations. Otherwise, you run out of people to have your business. So I would say annually in the beginning, and then, as you get more comfortable and as you feel like you're growing the right people that are, your brand advocates and are driving your business, then you may think about going out further.
Yeah, that's really great advice. I've noticed a lot of brands like that trying to appeal to a younger audience and seem cool. I can't think of one. I can't think of one off the bat, but I've definitely seen it. And I work with a lot of brands that work with new moms, and we see the same thing where we're looking for a very small window of time between 0 to 9 months pregnant and then the first 3 years of the baby's life, and then the mom ages out of the demographics. So yeah, always making sure that you have a new audience to pull from. Yeah, it's great. Armando, is there anything else you would like to share with our listeners before
there's always stuff to share. I think one of the things, tying it back to social and digital media, right? One of the things that's important is to make sure that you find the right partner. What I've found as a startup is you don't have a lot of money. And it's hard to say, I'm going to go invest whatever it is, $500 a month in something that I don't know if it'll work. Making sure you do a little bit of vetting of that process to find the right partner is important, and making sure that they understand your strategy, your target, right? So making sure you have a target before you go talk to them will also be important, because there's a lot of agencies that'll be happy to take your money.
Yep.
And tell you they're going to go do stuff. And so in that vein of reviewing your target, it's always good to review your agency every year and make sure that you've got the right partner. And don't be afraid to try something new, right? Do it in the vein of A/B testing. There's that whole adage of, take a big risk, get a big reward, and it's for a reason. We put money on, and let's say we had a $500 budget, we'd spend $400 on what we thought was the try and true, and then try to put $50 to $100 on something that was, who knows, right? And there's a lot of learning that can be had from that, to go ahead and try to figure out how do you accelerate your business faster.
Yeah, I think you touched on the importance of testing, which is so important for your audience, because you may think you know who your audience is, but your actual audience may end up being different than who you thought it was. And so you might never know that if you're not testing and doing targeting. I'm working with a brand right now that their target audience is 35 plus. And what we actually found is that the majority of people purchasing their product are 65 plus.
Yeah.
So you can learn a lot of interesting information through testing.
Yeah, funny story on that. Again, stays in this podcast, but when I was at Frito Lay and we were talking to Doritos users, right? It's traditionally been, we're focused on marketing toward teens. But the core consumer, the person who's the most valuable consumer for Doritos, is like the 35-year-old gamer who lives in their parents' basement, right? And I'm embellishing a little bit, but the reality is sometimes who your core user is and of your brand may not also be the person that you're trying to attract. And that's the tricky part, and that's the art and the science of marketing, which for me makes it really fun.
And for me too. I love blending the art and the science of data and creativity. So that's awesome. Yes, the munchies for Doritos.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Now I'm hungry.
Can we get some Doritos in here?
Exactly.
And Doritos sponsor our podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe. There you
I think
go.
Sapphire Suite has Doritos in the lobby.
They do.
There we go.
Yeah.
Well, we know what we're doing after this.
Doritos party. Awesome. So Armando, if listeners want to connect with you, where can they find you online?
LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. Armando Garza. There's only 1,000 of us, but no, I'm just kidding. But look for the guy that was at P&G, Frito Lay, and has done a lot of fun stuff.
Awesome. We'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile in our show notes as well.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being a
thank
guest
you.
today and joining us.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you. Kayla, always a pleasure.
All right. I'm Lindsay Mao.
I'm Kayla Pearlstein.
We're out.
Thank you.